we got a few minutes, yeah. I did, basically. Yeah, it's... So I went into Carlin last week. Thank you for coming. Just to let you know, we are putting this on the cable system, and so those people, there may be others watching. And we also are putting this on YouTube and Facebook. And the only reason I tell you that is it actually is therefore recorded, and you can go back and look at it later. And if you need some help with that, Casey or I will try and help you to get on your computer and get there and be able to do that. But that's the idea behind that. I had some residents that said, well, are you going to do it? Because I can't be there. I've got a doctor's appointment. I said, sure, we'll do that. So that's kind of there. So if you want to check, and did he really say that? Yes, you can go back and do that. Let's start with a word of prayer. Gracious Father, thank you again for another day, another season, and the joy of having the day that the Lord has made. We ask you to guide us today. Help me to speak clearly. Help me to be able to let people know exactly how things are in this community and where we're headed. Help me to answer all the questions that they may have in different kinds of ways. We pray this all in your name. Amen. Amen. All right. So one of the residents asked me, so this is the report that I gave to the board. And that's exactly right. The first Friday in February, the board met, and I gave this financial report about how things ended up last year in 2021. And I also gave them that information and kind of where I see us going for the next couple of years. So what we're doing in current things. So, but having said that, I have a caveat to that you'll see real quick. So I always start with the board and with the residents to talk a little bit about what is basically our weather vane or our guiding principle. This is our mission, values, and vision. And Atherton, our desire is to be a senior living community rooted in Christian values, encouraging, enriching lives and honoring all. And then we want to continue to honor Hannah's vision of serving those who've served in Christian ministry, and the values that we hope that we live out here in all levels of care and in all of our staff and even in our residents is faith, kindness, gratitude, and joy. So those are the things that we keep pushing forward and hoping that they become evident and alive here in our community. So I would tell you that last year at this time, when I met with the board, what I did, the very first thing was to tell them what are my goals for 2021. And I've done this every year for the last several years to them. And so I said, what I wanted to do was see Atherton build a duplex, prepare to remodel the villa, renew Atherton post-pandemic, close the gap, which was kind of a financial issue, and then prepare for transition. And I want you to know that we accomplished none of those. I laid them out as clearly as I could, and we didn't do any of them. You'll notice the duplex is sitting over there, right? So anyway, as I said before, today I'm going to talk to you about some of the plans for the future of Atherton. This is my track record, folks. I'm sorry. So 4 statements. I've kind of gone to this to kind of give you an idea and give the framework for how to talk about where Atherton's at. And so these are the 4 statements I want to make today. And finally, we have several projects, operations projects, which will move forward in 2022. And right next to this, you can see fingers crossed. Okay. How is Atherton doing? Atherton is healthy. Atherton is healthy. All right. So this is kind of the statement of operations. And this is from last year. And what I just wanted to show you was, this is the budget. So we budgeted $23.5 million in revenues and about $21 million in expenses. And we expected to have a negative of about $307,000. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen related to COVID, and that's where we thought we'd be at. And I want to tell you right now that the CFO absolutely did a terrible job at projection last year. Terrible. Because we ended up taking in $4 million more. Okay. Our expenses were off by $1 million under, which resulted in us, as you can see, almost $7 million to the good. And when you take away, and our stocks and everything did well, we ended up $8 million above what we'd projected last year. Okay. With Atherton, and I have a very small history, it's only 10 years. That's the best ever. But if you look back for 20 to 25 to 30 to even 40 years, that would be by far the best year that Atherton has ever had. But I need to tell you how we got there, because the mixed part is a part of that. And obviously, yes, the year before had been a good year, but it's in nowhere next to that. So just to tell you a little bit how you got there, and this will help you to understand, this is the mixed part of that. Number one, residential living was about right on target. So we filled the number of units in IL and AL, what we thought, and so we were right on target. As you can see from skilled nursing, we missed that but by $1.5 million. That was our target, and that's because of what happened in January and February, when we had such a loss of life as a result of COVID being in skilled nursing. And I'll talk more about that later, but that impacts us. Now, having said that, I will tell you that the loss for the year was $1.5 million. But at July, we had lost $1.4 million. So between July and the end of the year, we lost $100,000. So we were able to solve that problem in the first 6 months of the year and get us back to where we were. You still carry all that forward, but it allowed us to do that. This is the part that, and again, once again, Kimberly did a terrible job of budgeting. So she budgeted much lower. We ended up receiving $5 million in gifts in 2021, which is 845%. It might as well have been a tech stock. Okay, so anyway, and that's what made that so extraordinary. Now, I will tell you that I give Kimberly a lot of credit for this, but that goes to the development department for literally years. Some people died in 2021 that left legacy gifts to Atherton. And those gifts then were realized as a result of that. And that's because of the work of John Heck. It's because of the work of Dale Torrey, different kinds of ones that have all served in that chair. And that's what that kind of legacy giving does. We're very thankful for it, and it made a significant difference. But it's because of the work over the decades of all the people and the values in which people have believed in Atherton. And so they've been willing to give a legacy gift to Atherton. And so we're very thankful for that. And then we had some additional gifts that were just wonderful and extraordinary. People said, we want to do something for Atherton, and they gave. And so that's what created this. You can see everything else is kind of pretty normal. It doesn't change much. They're just off a little bit here and there, but they weren't a big part of it. But that just changed everything. And that's what created this so positive number. So anyway, that's just, I've told her that she ought to do this again next year. She reminded me that people have to die to do that. And I said, you would put that's a really wet rag on the whole thing. Okay. So last year, salaries and benefits, as you can see, we saved about $1 million in salaries and benefits. Remember that when there are two things happening at the same time. Number one, when we lost people in skilled nursing, and so our occupancy went down, then we don't need as many people to work. So you budgeted at a higher level, but then you can roll some of those people off. That's a part of that. The other thing is it's just harder to find people for us to work with. If you will go and at any restaurant or almost any place around Alhambra, but this would be LA County, and it actually is truthfully across America, you will see signs out saying, we're hiring. Everybody's hiring. And there's just not enough workers to fill all of those positions or people that want to work at those levels the way it was before the pandemic hit. So it's really kind of an interesting dynamic. We struggle with this, and I'll talk more about that, how really it kind of affects Atherton in all of this, but that's part of this issue. In operations, we were just very close. We about $11 million, which was under about $150,000. And so our total was under about $1 million from what we projected. COVID costs for staffing for last year that was not budgeted was about $150,000. In other words, whenever we have COVID in the building, then we end up paying a COVID stipend or a COVID premium in order to keep people working. It became an industry standard for us in order to retain workers. We would start giving them a small bonus or an additional amount all the way through. And then we had additional COVID expenses. Some were budgeted and they ended up being a little bit less. When COVID started after 2020, we budgeted some money for COVID that would have to do with supplies, different kinds of things, masks, all of gowns, equipment, all that stuff that we would have to deal with. So you can see in this, we added about $250,000 to the budget to cover those costs. And we ended up, we spent about $250,000, which was a little bit under. But the salary costs were not budgeted. And so we just had to roll those in, so that gives a part of that. So this is the other thing that's kind of interesting. Electricity last year was, for the whole campus, was $81,000. It was up 18% over budget. Okay, some of that, there are two factors going on. Number one, electricity is costing a little bit more. Okay, the second thing is it was hot last summer, and you folks ran your air conditioners. That's a part of that. So I will tell you that I would never discourage. So some people have said to us, and there are still some people at Atherton that are on these contracts that actually they control their utility spending. They get a bill from the Edison directly related to there, and that was an early part of the model because it was your choice. We're pay for services, and we just decided that you could do that. But for the last about 5 years, we did what was called bundle pricing, and we brought all of those in. So you get one bill. And many people have said many people, when we made that transition, said, look, if I come to Atherton, I just want to write one check. You take care of all of them. You figure it out. Just tell me what I'm supposed to pay. I don't want to have to pay for water. I don't want electricity, And the only, in some areas, the only thing, in some areas we take care of TV and internet, in other areas we don't. And that's still the one that's kind of out there that we're still trying to work with. But as a whole, all of the utilities are bundled. And so here's what I will tell you. You ought to keep your temperature what keeps you safe and comfortable. In other words, don't run the temperature in your unit where you might have heat stroke to save Atherton money. You need to be comfortable with where you're at. Now, your house is not a freezer, okay? So, but at least from what I've found, most seniors are cold. They're not hot. So that's a good news for us. So anyway, people say that sometimes to me. We'll just have to figure out. And as you've heard about climate change, that means that this area is going to get a little bit hotter. It's going to be hotter over the next decades. There'll be more hot days instead of cold days. That's going to be the challenge that we're going to have to figure out about that. But that's a part of that. And then we added to some of our security services, and that cost us more. That's primarily guards that are here at night wandering and taking care of security. And we did that because we had some intruders that walked onto the campus and we couldn't control everything what we wanted to. And we wanted to be able to make sure that you're safe and secure. We also added, so Atherton, did you know that Atherton has 17 cameras now all over campus? Okay. So we had a lady that fell the other day outside. She was walking in a particular area. We were able to go back and see why she fell because we had it on a camera. Any car that comes into Atherton, we will know, we can go back and we can tell exactly what the license plate is on that car. So if you want to alert us in case you don't want family to show up here or call you in case you're concerned about family, we can do that too. Nonetheless. So we've added some of these features because you're in an urban community. Atherton is in the middle of Alhambra, and there seems to be different kinds of things going on. And as a whole, we really don't get many issues, but every once in a while we get random issues. So one of our residents had their catalytic converter stolen off their car. Okay, they came right in and stole it. Another lady had their tires stolen off of their car. All right. We just didn't catch it in the middle of the night. The lady was wonderful. I said, I'm really sorry about that. She says, they were old tires. Atherton, she got new tires from Atherton. So we're trying to be as aware of this. We want to have you be and feel as safe as we can possibly do this. And so that's why we've added all these pieces. But that's a part of this. At some point, yes, Atherton may look in putting some kind of fencing around and doing that. But the next steps, like if we would put a guard and only have one place where people could come in and out, and we'd put a guard there. It would make things safer, but it would make things more frustrating for everyone. And so we're trying to keep a balance in all of that, and we'll continue to watch and see about that. So these are the ways that I measure from year to year how Atherton is doing. So this is the metric that we call days cash on hand. It takes a little over it's now about $55,000 a day to run Atherton, okay? And so the metric that they use is how much money do you have that if you didn't get any more money, you could run Atherton for a day. And as you can see, when we started back in 2014, we had 158 days. And we're now up to 504 days at the end of the year. And so if you didn't pay your bills at all, any of you, we could still run Atherton for 500 days, and we'd still be able to pay the lawyers to come get you. Okay? So that's that. That's the healthiest number in the last 25 years for Atherton. So that's why I say Atherton's at a very healthy place financially. It has the money that it needs to do the work, to keep the community safe, to go through these up cycles and down cycles in the business. We didn't know that there was going to be a war. I don't know how that's going to affect us. I don't know how inflation is going to deal with. We're going to have to deal with inflation. I don't know how employees. I don't know what the ins and outs of all of those knew. What I know is I have the reserves to deal with these issues now. You don't have to worry, and I don't have to worry. We'll just figure this out because of where we're at. The other thing is cash to debt. This means what is your debt and how much cash do you have to meet that debt? And you can see we had basically 27% down here in 2014, and now we have almost 100%. So that means we have as much money in the bank as we have debt that we owe to the mortgage company, which is about in the $30 million range. Okay, that's good. So if you had a house that was worth, say, $1 million, but you had $1 million in the bank, you'd feel okay. Now, you'd still continue to pay that mortgage because that's the best way you do this. You don't just, I don't want to liquidate that 30 million so I don't have any debt and then I don't have any cash to run the organization. But it's just a healthy place to be. You're feeling like that you can do the things that you need to do. And so that's what that's all about. And so those numbers are actually better than, like I say, they've been in 30 years that I know of. Operations. So this is the net operating margin, and that means how efficient you are as an organization. These two, operating ratio and net operating margins. And you can see right up here, we basically target ourselves against other communities that are like us. And as you can see, these numbers changed because ours plummeted in 2021. And the reason was because we could never make up for that loss that happened in the early part of the year related to what happened in skilled nursing. Interestingly enough, that does what's called your core operation, and it takes out all those gifts. And that's the reason why. So all of that money, all those gifts that came in, it got put in the previous one. That's what created all of this. But then it got taken out here. And that's why these numbers are low. Where should this number be? Well, it should be somewhere in 5.9 or 6.7. So, and we've been pretty good at that. We were way down here. We came up. We were in really good shape. We dropped a little bit in 2020, and last year we dropped even more. And that was the piece of that. Same thing with the operating ratio. I say if the operating ratio is 100, you're fine. You're in good shape. Basically, it means that the money coming in without the gifts is enough to cover the expenses that you have. Last year, without all those gifts, it wasn't. Okay, and that goes to how you do budgeting and where your revenues are and stuff. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to our budget, but we think we've solved those problems and we won't have that problem this year. So anyway, so you can kind of see it's changed, but it's been really good last year. It just wasn't very good. By the way, at the end of July, the second quarter, this number was 117. So we were able over the second half of the year to bring it down significantly. The same way when I talked about we solved the skilled nursing problem and made that loss a lot less. So those are all a part of what that is. This was, I think, this was all down to 4.2 or down, and we were able. So the second half of the year, we were able to manage all that, but we couldn't overcome what happened in the first half of the year. These are just, this tells you about what happens with entry fees. All of you enjoyed writing that check for the entry fee when you came to Atherton, right? Yeah, and this tells you a little bit about that. And Atherton's been at a pretty healthy place for all these years, but last year it dipped a little bit. Now I'll tell you why this dipped. It wasn't because Atherton didn't do a good job of bringing in new people. It's because last year we had repayable contracts. Take that off from that. And that's what created this. We had a lot of turnover last year. There were several people that were in skilled nursing or a few people that ended up leaving Atherton. And so we had to pay those out. We couldn't carry those over. And that was part of what's created this. We anticipate that that's going to even itself out this next year because we don't see that coming in the same way that we did last year. And then capital expenditures as a percentage of depreciation. How much are you expending to keep your community up? And as you can see, they're saying you need to spend about 100% of depreciation, 116% of depreciation, and we have never been there in all these years. We've been behind on that a little bit, and my answer has been because I had to do two things at the same time. I had to save and spend. I had to save because I had to get the days cash on hand up higher so that we could weather those kinds of things, but I had to spend to do a bunch of stuff to improve the community, and so that was kind of the balancing act that we did. The other problem is you really can't get this up much higher until you start building new buildings. I really tried. I just couldn't get it done last year. I really tried. All right. So that tells you about it. Any questions about the financials at all? Okay, have I thoroughly confused some of you? Okay. I just come back to this. Atherton is very healthy financially. It's in a very good place financially, and that's a good thing for all of us because no matter what happens in this world, we'll be able to manage for this community and keep you as safe as we can and keep this community as healthy as we can, doing the improvements we need to do. That's all good for all of us. So we're very thankful for that, and that's a great place to be. Money's not everything, but money is something. So that occupancy. So I said our occupancy is solid and on budget currently. This is how the year was, and this is kind of where we're at. So our budget, so occupancy drives revenue, and so I always say, these are the number targets we put last year that we wanted to meet at every level of care. IL outside the courtyard, assisted living and companion care, and SNF. If we hit these numbers, we believe that we would have all the revenues that we would need to do. So this is where we ended up. Down 150, up, above that number, under, and under. This number had been under was under all year, never got up, and it got down to 53. Okay, so we were losing about half of the revenue we were expecting. Remember at Atherton, independent assisted living, what's called the RL, provides about half of the revenues. SNF provides about half of the revenues. If you want to say 45 and 45, and everything else is 10%. So those are the two big tranches. If you miss it in those, you're probably not going to make it up someplace else. Those are the big numbers. And so anyway, this was down on that. This is currently where we're at today. We're at 150, but we have 11 deposits. for Classic. I have 49, but I have one deposit for skilled nursing that will be here by the end of the second quarter, I'm sure. There are 33 units available with one coming, and then this number is at 82. And that's okay because of the way we've redone the budget. Just make you aware. Last year, we had 26 move-ins and 25 move-outs in independent living. Okay? And we're fine with that. You know, people come in, people go out. That's the nature of what we do. In assisted living, we had 15 move-ins and 14 move-outs. Okay. We had 6 10% deposits, which means that they're on our waiting list. 6 10% deposits that we still had on our books at the end of the year. And there are more of them since. That's what this 11 number is. And 77 wait list deposits. So last year, all through the pandemic, 77 people came and said, put me on the list. I'm still thinking about Atherton. Okay, that's good news for us. That's not a big marketing issue. They even did it without us doing some really good courting. You remember when you thought about coming to Atherton and you'd come here and we'd invite you to come to a really nice luncheon and we'd put on the dog. We'd put really nice, all those things. Wasn't that fun? Some of you look at me and say, like this all the time? No. No, we're putting our best foot forward here. So anyway, but 77 did that. And that's really good for us. And our skilled nursing average was 72. Remember, we budgeted at 92. That's what that deficit is all about. That's where that is. Now, so the big challenge for us this year is, can we, because all the people passed in skilled nursing, can we redo that balance? Because we need to have more people in skilled nursing. We can't live at that 53 number, but can we live at a number lower than the 92? Can we get back to an equal balance in the right mix? And Jackie was able to do that. And so this year the budget is 152 in Classic, 46.5 in the Courtyard, 32 in assisted living, and 85 in skilled nursing. Okay. At the end of the month, in January, this is where we were at. So we were right on target. We're up there. We're just under, up. That's good. And when you look today, under, but coming back, continues to be over, now over, a little bit under. This changes daily. Okay? So as a result of that, we're on track. And if you looked at our January financials, you would see that we don't have a deficit. We're right on track for where we're supposed to be. We feel good about that. Now, if some of you could just fix the stock market, we'd be more happy. That's the one that is not looking that good. Okay. We are managing the pandemic and as part of our operations. So I want to show you a picture of the pandemic in boxes at Atherton. Okay, so I've tracked what I call 4 surges. The first surge in March of 2020 to basically December of, it would be 2020. It wasn't 2021. That's the wrong date. The second surge was December of 2020 to February of 2021. The third surge was February of 2021 to December of 2021. And the last one is the fourth surge to the present, this mid-December of 2021 to the present. So you can see in the first surge, when this came for about that first year, we did about 4,600 tests, okay? We had 30 positive results. There were 3 residents who were positive, 2 in skilled nursing and 1 in assisted living. There were 27 positive staff. We were thinking we were pretty good. Because remember, those tests took a lot longer, and as a whole, everything was working, and we really had not had any kind of things. The 2 residents in skilled nursing, they all recovered, and you were hearing all these stories about what was happening in skilled nursing with people dying with the virus and all those things. And so we were thinking we've got everything wired and we're doing really well. And then the second surge hit in December of last year. And it was massive and brutal for us. We did 2,600 tests in just those basically 2.5 months. We had 124 people that tested positive. 53 were residents, 4 in IL, 8 in AL, and 41 in skilled nursing. When it got in, it just ran rampant. 15 people were hospitalized and 17 people died in that time. In that time, those 41 that passed, 17 passed with COVID. Another 8 passed away after recovering, but only a month after that. Okay, it was just brutal. 43 people dying at Atherton is the most that I know of in our history in that small of segment of time. It was just so overwhelming and so challenging. 71 of our staff were positive, created all sorts of staffing challenges for us during that, and 2 of those people were hospitalized and do that. And the 2 people that were hospitalized actually are recovered. They're doing great. They don't have long-term COVID. They came through it okay. And remember, this was pre-vaccines. There was nothing out there. It was just testing and hoping, right? Testing and masking and doing that. And I can tell you how most of our people caught COVID. Most of our people caught COVID because they went to Thanksgiving with family. And of course, you know family's safe, so you don't have to wear a mask or do anything. And then they brought it back here. And when it came back, it was brutal. Okay, so once the vaccines came out, and by February, most all of you were fully vaccinated by then. We had a wonderful response, and you can see that here. But from February of last year until December, we did 2,417 tests. 99% of our residents were vaccinated, and 95% of our staff was fully vaccinated. It was wonderful. And we had 2 staff people that tested positive in that whole 8 months after that time. It was remarkable, and it did a wonderful thing for us. Then the 4th surge was the middle of December. Again, we did a lot of testing. We had 30 positive results. We had 5 residents, only 1 in skilled nursing, 4 in IL, and nobody was hospitalized, and 25 of the staff were positive. So that's been wonderful for us. We had another one test positive yesterday, an administrator. She's both a medical administrator. She is both fully vaccinated and boosted, and it's like a light cold, and she should be back with us in several days. So that's it. But for the total, so Atherton's done over 12,000 tests since we started this. So here's the interesting thing about that. Those tests run about $100 a test that we do. So if Atherton had to pay for those tests, we would have paid $1.2 million for testing. But we found a testing company, and they are billing your insurance. They have been billing the insurance all the time. So it has not cost Atherton very much. But when your insurance premiums renew, something's going to have to be built into that. It's been not everybody, all the communities. I've talked to some other administrators. They've worked with companies, and they said, we will bill, but if we don't get any money back, we're going to charge you for them based upon how that billing works. Our company has never charged us a dime. They've just done all the billing and taken care of it, our lab. It's been a wonderful relationship and been very helpful. So when early on, that was a big part. I was trying to figure out how are we going to work this, because I could see those numbers just escalating quickly, and it ended up not taking place. Yes? Exactly. But even then, I worried about having to pay for the short-term test, what's called the POC or the antigen test, the point of care test. I worried about that. We haven't had to pay for those. We've gotten those. We also have, but we haven't had to pay for what's called the PCR test, which is more of a molecular test that we've done for all our staff. Much more sensitive, much more accurate. And we haven't had to pay for any of those. Yes. Yes, they've been sending them to us. Mhm. Okay. So your tax dollars will work, by the way. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. If you take a test here, if you take a PCR test with us or have taken a PSS, we get your insurance information and they're taking care of it. We've never received a bill on this. It's a good thing for us. So that was one of those big costs that we were able to figure out and avoid, and it's made a difference in our bottom line. So you can see 186 people have tested positive here at Atherton since this whole pandemic. 61 were residents and 125 staff. Okay. As I said before, we lost people. I only know of one person who has long-term COVID from all of this. And that person no longer works at Atherton, resigned, couldn't ever get back to their duties here. But apart from that, all the people that had COVID that work here have not had that. I think that in 2022, we'll continue to deal with COVID. COVID is not going away. We are not post-pandemic now. That's just not true. We're tired of masks. We're tired of a lot of the things. Things are opening up more. We're learning to live with it better. There will still be some things that you will do. There probably will be a booster next fall that you will have the opportunity to get if you want to get it. When you go to some places, you will still have to wear a mask. Atherton is still under a mask mandate. I can tell you when that mask mandate will end. It's when LA County gets to the moderate rate of infection. And for that, that means that that in LA County, there'll be somewhere around 700 infections per day that'll be tested positive. When that does, we're about in that. We have to maintain that for 7 days. And that's when the mask mandate will probably come off in skilled nursing, in senior living. And the reason that it's still there is because they view this population as the most vulnerable. And that's why it's in there. Nobody has to wear a mask when you're outside at Atherton, but I ask you to carry one in case you engage people, and it's just a kindness to say put it on but you don't need to wear a mask. But when we're indoors, we do wear masks. And that's just a part of our ethos. It's going to be a part of that until that changes for the Department of Public Health. That's what we're going to have to live with. So anyway, just to tell you a little bit about that information. Okay. Any questions about COVID, by the way? Yeah, you probably don't want to ask any questions about COVID. I'm not sure I want to give any answers about COVID anymore. Anyway. All right, operations, just a few things that happened last year. You can see, so this is kind of interesting. So Atherton in 2021 had, in 2020 had 156 employees and 84 in Morrison. We had about 230 employees. At the end of last year, Atherton had 138 and Morrison had 76. We had about 30 less employees last year. Okay. Atherton would love to hire some people. Atherton now, the starting wage at Atherton is $15.50, which is pretty much all places around us. CNAs start a little over 16. I think most of our CNAs are now getting $16.50 to $17, somewhere around that, which is pretty much many of our CNAs now. Most of our CNAs are now getting over $20 an hour. Most of our staff is getting over in the $20 range. So anyway, but we're just trying to keep those figured out. We would hire more people, we just can't find them. And that's the challenge. So this is how this affects you. It hasn't really affected you in maintenance, but it might because the people that we have there have been long time and they continue to work. And so we're able to get to most of those things. It's been a little bit of a problem for us in housekeeping because we can't find people to work in housekeeping. So sometimes things get changed around a little bit so that we can cover everyone that you're doing. It is a challenge for us in skilled nursing. And in skilled nursing, the way we've been able to compensate that is by paying them overtime. We've asked people to take secondary shifts. So if you're making $20 an hour and we ask you to take the next shift, you're now making $30 an hour for next shift. It's a mixed bag. They're not sure they want to work, but they like the money. That's part of the struggle there, but that's the way we've been able to manage that to stay legal as an organization. In the dining area, it's been a lot. We have an adequate number of people. We don't, well, I said we don't have any play in the system anymore. In other words, we don't have people that we can just call in if we need them. So for example, on Fridays when we serve salmon and you all decide to come eat, okay, and the dining hall gets full, if one or two people call out and say, I don't feel well today, I can't come in, there's nobody to call. So now there's less servers that are working there. Now, when it's full and there's less servers, what happens to you? You have to wait a little bit longer. You get a little bit more frustrated with all of that. I had one person sent me a note and said, you ought to fire this particular person because of the way that they're doing. They didn't do boom, boom, boom. And I wanted to say to them, they sent it anonymously, I wanted to say to them, I really don't have much choice. I'm very sorry. They're doing the best they can based upon what's happening. So that's the challenge that we have in those kinds of areas to do that. That's the staffing things that we face that make it a little bit more difficult for us. That's how that plays out. We will continue to hire. As Cotty said today, I talked to her and I said, what about nursing? And she said, we can't find people. We keep beating the bushes and saying, would you be interested? What's really happening across the industry is cannibalization. So somebody will offer somebody else who's working over there, come work for us, we'll give you another $1. Only another $1 doesn't get it anymore, $2, $3. So a lady told me one of her RNs in skilled nursing was called by a hospital. And the hospital was going to offer her a rate, and she said, I think it was $43 to $45 an hour. It was an RN. It might have been a little bit more than that. And she said, I can match that. And she said, the hospital offered me a $25,000 signing bonus for 1 year commitment. She said, I can't match that. That's where you're at. So that's what you have to work with in terms of that. So those are the kinds of things that you kind of keep working. We tried to hire some people away from other places. We actually had a person that said yes to us, then went back to her old boss. The old boss matched it. We're out. This is just the way. So this is the kinds of things, and that's how we're trying, that's kind of the balancing the tensions that we go through. But we have less employees now. That means less costs, lower costs, but it doesn't always mean that we get better service, and that's the challenge for us. Workers' comp, we actually have only 2 workers' comp cases. That's really good for us. That's really a healthy place to be, and we're very thankful for that. As I said, at the end of December for last quarter, we were getting about 2,000 work orders a day, 23. We usually get them done within 24 to 48 hours. So we're pleased with that response. We think that most of the time, most of your input has been that they get to things and they get stuff done, and we're thankful for that. And so I'm very thankful for that team. Most of you know that there was a gentleman here by the name of Nandor Bank, and was wonderful gentleman. He has retired and moved to Texas, and so one of our maintenance men, Tom Nakajima, was promoted to the assistant director, and he's kind of taking that place over. And so we're very thankful for him. Tom does a great job. We're very thankful for that. You can kind of see we roofed 10 units, the administrative building and the dining hall last year. We've upgraded windows in Irving Terrace and 705 Irving. We've done some work in the Irving Manor Common area, made that a little bit better. We did some stuff there because we wanted better drainage. It just doesn't rain, but we were hopeful. And then we've trimmed trees all over the campus. So Atherton pays about $40,000 a year to trim trees. But I can honestly say that we now have that built into what we're doing, and every year we have a plan and a cycle. And so we're getting all the trees trimmed. They're very healthy. I don't worry anymore about a dead limb falling on a car, which I did for a while because we had dead limbs in way too many trees, all along Irving Street and every place else. And I think that as a whole, all the trees around are healthy. Some of the ones on Irving Streets are not all that healthy. I just took down three trees on Irving Street, two of them in preparation for the building of the duplex, and they needed to run that. And when we looked inside those trees, the whole core was hollowed out. So now that's why they didn't have much of a canopy. And because they didn't have much of a canopy, they would have had dead wood. We took all that out. That makes if they don't have much of a canopy, they're probably not going to blow over. But if they have a large canopy and they're hollowed out on the inside, winds come down, knock them down. So anyway, so those trees are not, I know you love those trees along Irving Street, but they're not as healthy as you may think. And so we're just kind of monitoring and watching them. We want to continue to keep that canopy in place, but those trees have overgrown much of that space. And so we're kind of watching and kind of working our way through to see about that, keeping as healthy as they can. And then you can kind of see we finished the Reno Fitness Center, the multi-purpose room, renovated Jocelyn Rice Lounge. We've upgraded the TV systems in skilled nursing in Casa Colby. We have new drapes in skilled nursing, and we have a handicap ramp over Irving. So those are all the kinds of things that we did last year. And I'll tell you a little bit more about other projects that are coming. But anyway, it was a busy year. We accomplished a lot. I did not put any of those as the goals, so I can't count those. Okay. Charitable Mission last year. Basically, Atherton subsidized $1.2 million. We budgeted $1.5, so we didn't have to subsidize quite as much, and we're fine with that. But anyway, every year Atherton subsidizes people in our community, primarily as ministers and missionaries, who is our mission to do that, and we're a part of that. We're very grateful that we can do that. Sometimes there are residents of Atherton. We sign a contract with you. And when you come, we examine how your finances. Sometimes you are like one lady that I talked to that she said, when I came here, I thought I had enough money. I've outlived my money. And I was happy to say to her, don't worry. You're an Atherton resident. We will take care of you. You will not have to leave. And Atherton in its over 100 years has never asked anybody to leave because of money. When we sign that contract, we honor that contract. And we look at that closely, but that's part of our promise that we give to you. This is just a little thing. This is the budget for 2022, and you can kind of see in here, last year we budgeted with a deficit. This year it's about $24 million with 21 spent expenses, and then you kind of see all the other stuff. We're supposed to have about $104,000 to the good. So mostly that probably doesn't mean much to you at all, other than the fact that we told you that we gave you a 4% increase in fees. That is pretty standard across what happened in much of the San Gabriel Valley with communities like ours. I saw one community that did 5. I did one community that did the great deal of only doing a 3.9% cost increase. I thought that was really tricky. It's like buying the car for $19,995, you know. All right. So anyway, so it's pretty standard. I had one resident ask me a little bit about food because of inflation, and food is an issue and those costs. Having said that, we negotiated a contract earlier, and we're on a guaranteed cost rate with Morrison. So we continue to work with them, but those costs are locked in. And so we feel good about that. In the short term, what we want to make sure is we keep the quality up that we're doing, but that's a challenge for us. Now, it may come back next year, and there may be other kinds of issues. But as a whole, those are all pretty much in place for that. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff that I've kind of lifted up? Okay, just a few more things, and then we'll call it a morning. There are 2 board members that stepped off the board this year. Many of you may or may not know them, but I just wanted to inform you of this. Or one of them, I'm sorry. John Castillo, who serves as a pastor at Corona First Baptist Church, stepped off the board. His replacement will be Dr. Matt Barnes from Alhambra First Baptist, who will begin to serve starting next in May at our next meeting. And then we've added a new person, Steve Garcia, who's the president and COO of TM Camping and is a camp director at Thousand Pines. And so we're glad to have him join us and be a part of our board. We think those are both good additions to our board, and we feel very good about that. Some of you know, I know Larry knows Steve pretty well. We're very thankful. Many of you know Matt, but we're very thankful to have them both be a part of our board. There are some staff changes that I wanted to alert you. I talked to you about Tom Nakajima. So this, as of the beginning of March, Leo Giamalva has assumed a new position, a promotion for him as what's called the Operations Administrator of Atherton. He's going to oversee all the safety issues. So there are an enormous amount of safety issues that come into play at Atherton. All the fire sprinklers, fire alarms, the cameras, the guards, all of these other things, earthquake preparedness, all those things are going to be part of Leo's portfolio. So the good news is when the fire alarm goes off unexpectedly, you can call him. By the way, you know what the number one reason is the fire alarms go off at Atherton? Somebody burned something. Something burned something. Yeah, they burned something in the kitchen or something like that. It sets the fire alarm off. But I will say, I really do appreciate when you do that because it gets the adrenaline going for the maintenance team. They are on their way. Please do that during the day when they're here. Yes, Larry. Overseeing. Yeah. So we had a significant problem. We just had too many people getting hurt and having too many cases. So the way that insurance works, every organization across the state, I think it's across America now, has to provide workers' comp for their employees. And so there's a rate based upon your industry, and you figure that, and whatever that rate for the industry is 100%. And so whatever you pay that rate is. So Atherton at one point had over 20 outstanding claims, and our rate was 217%. So if your rate for insurance is $400,000 for the year, you times that times 217, and you end up paying, at one point, Atherton one year paid $1.6 million for its workers' comp, which was 10% of its budget. Okay. Leo fixed that problem. Workers' comp today, $300,000. He fixed that problem, and he worked really hard at it, got all these cases closed, brought it all down, helped the staff with all the kinds of safety procedures that take place. So it made a huge difference. So big difference for all of us, thankfully. And then we have also hired a new skilled nursing administrator. His name is David Shellhammer. He should be here the first part of April. David is interim because Joelle Medina, who many of you know and have met, will become the new skilled nursing administrator at Atherton, but we need somebody to train her. And so we had to hire a new person to assume the license and take care of that. And so you will see him around. We'll get to meet him a little bit. We're thankful for that. We look forward to when Joelle, this is going to take probably a little over a year in order for her to get licensed. To be a skilled nursing administrator in the state of California, you have to do 1,000 hours of work, as well as pass a federal and a state test. 1,000 hours is on site. So the best that Joelle can do for those hours is 40 hours a week working here full time. She can't go faster than that. Now, we may have to get to those hours reduced because she comes from a therapy background, so is well aware of skilled nursing, but it takes a while you do that. And you have to do both of these, and so it just takes a while for us to work through this. But David, I think, will provide a very helpful thing. And then lastly, in this area, so I didn't know whether to write this in the third person or the first person, so I wrote in the first person. Last year, about this time, I was thinking about retiring. Some of you kind of knew that. It was kind of underneath everything that was happening. And the board assembled somebody to go through and do a bunch of interviews with people to see about who would be the next CEO of Atherton. And when we got to the point where we were about ready to hire somebody, I began to rethink my position. I'd been doing that. So let me tell you what drove me to think about retiring. Two things. My wife is retired. That's one. And number two, right after the middle of COVID in late January, I was truly exhausted, frustrated. And I was done with anything. I was just overwhelmed. And so that's what made me begin to think about that and just say, maybe I don't have the energy and strength to do this. And then things got better. And so I began to talk to my wife about, I really think that there are things that I'd like to do at Atherton. I still enjoy working. I like the people. I like what I do. It's challenging for me. I don't know what I'm going to do in retirement yet. I haven't thought that through. And I think that you're going to get really mad at me if I'm around too much. It's going to be a really big adjustment for both of us. And so I asked the board if they would consider allowing me to stay on, and they were gracious enough to say yes. And so I've said, well, thank you, you're kind. So we'd all be in trouble if you booed. So nonetheless, I've decided to commit to 3 more years. So 2022, 2023, and 2024. On January 6th, 2025, I will turn 69 years old. And I think at that point, I will be done. Okay. Even if I haven't figured out retirement, I think I will be done. Okay. So anyway, I've given a 3-year commitment. My work schedule is changing a little bit, and this is an accommodation. Chrissy and I talking through this issue. And one of that is that I will not be on campus on Fridays. I will work from where Chrissy and I are at together, which is a lot of different places. It could be with our grandchildren. It could be a lot of different places. But nonetheless, I will only be on campus 4 days a week instead of 5. And at least once every 4 months, I will probably be gone for a full week to work from home and do those kinds of things. And the board was okay with that and doing that. If that becomes a problem, then we may need to redo this. But I think that because Atherton is healthy and the projects we have are pretty well laid out and the team that we have is pretty good and seasoned, I think that will work out fine. I'm always available by phone, as most of you know, preferably not at 2 and 3 a.m., but nonetheless, I am available, and we can work around that. But that's kind of so I just wanted to make you aware of that, and I haven't started doing that yet. This week, today is my last day here. Tomorrow, I'm working from our home up in the Central Valley of California. And so, but I will start doing that. And so you can kind of be aware of that. So, I won't be going I've had to inform Starbucks. I won't be going on Fridays again. They're really disappointed about that. I won't be walking outside on Fridays. So it's a big change. Anyway, just to make you aware. Any questions about those? You need to say this like this.
Oh, okay. I am your resident representative to the board, and I have seen the work that Craig and his staff do, and they are an extremely, extremely hardworking group. And I want everyone to know that and appreciate that. You know, the budget is hard to put together. Craig is all over the place. You know, well, that's not quite what I want to say, but I mean,
No, that's probably a true
yes,
statement too.
but he's available. He is the CEO who has been available to everyone, and I want everyone to know how appreciative we are. Thank you, and I'm glad you're staying.
Thank you. So, yes, you do get March free. So anyway, just a couple things to tell you about the future, and I'll do this very quickly. Number one, since I first came on, one of the challenge was to help Atherton recover from the courtyard. As you kind of saw the numbers, because of what happened with the courtyard, Atherton took a financial hit. It just took a while to work through. It took financial resources away from other areas to restore the community. There were a whole range of things that were playing out. There was the workers' comp issue and those kinds of things. And so when I came on, part of that was to just see, can you get us back to even? They didn't never really said that, but that was the hope. So kind of what I showed you from the financials, Atherton is as healthy now as it ever has been financially in terms of the community, all these kinds of issues. We're just in a good place. There's not a huge amount of deferred maintenance in the community. We have the staffing pretty much right. Like I said, we don't have the elasticity, but we have the staffing right. Nobody told me that we would have this pandemic. I'm not sure I would have said yes at that point, but we went through a pandemic and we ended up being in pretty good shape. It was terrible to lose the people we lost. So I've said this to a lot of different people. So of the 43 people that died in that basically 10-week segment, of the 43 people that died, the average age of them dying was 92 years old. Okay? The average age of the COVID person that died, the 25 people who died with COVID, 91. So all of those people had lived good lives, and they're not an aberration to what happened. But it came so quickly and fast. And I will say, I still maintain that the tragedy of that was many of them died without loved ones at their bedside. And many of them died and we didn't get to celebrate their lives and what they're doing. And that was just heartbreaking for me. I wish they hadn't died in that amount, but that was really difficult. So that was a part of that. Atherton is recovered from the courtyard and it's ready to begin to look at new things. And Atherton has come through the pandemic fine, healthy. The pandemic's not over, but we now have another piece that's a part of our operations. And so you'll see this come in different kinds of ways. I firmly believe that sometime this spring, we will take masks off and be able to do gatherings and have dinners and do all this stuff without masks. I firmly believe that. But I will tell you, next fall, there may be a shot that will be offered to you, another booster, because there'll be another variant. How many of you take flu shots every fall? Okay, this might be one of those. It might be like that. Maybe we'll have some more cases, and such that we'll have to put masks back on and do that. You're going to have to do masks. It's going to come and go. And that's just the reality of living in a senior living community about that, to work around that. And so we will see how this plays out, but that's how I think it's going to play out. But it's not going away. And I say post-pandemic, but we're actually not post-pandemic. We're just in the next phase. And it's kind of the maintenance of, and we'll learn to associate and be comfortable. If any of you have ever gone to Hong Kong, you would probably see people in masks all the time. And in many Asian countries, people have learned that masking keeps people safe. I haven't had a cold or a flu for 2 years. Maybe it's not out. Maybe it's only COVID anymore. But anyway, the masking in social environments sometimes keeps people safer. So those two are part of that. So, and I talked a little bit about this, and that just to tell you, the surge of 2020, 121 cases, the surge of 2021, 30 cases. 17 people died with COVID in 2020. Nobody died in 2021. Vaccines have made a significant difference. When they say vaccines, they didn't keep people from getting the virus, but they were remarkably effective at keeping people from going to the hospital and dying. So if you want to know about LA County, here's what I'll tell you. This is fascinating to me. In 2020, the highest number of cases per day was at about 20,000 per day. Okay. The highest number of deaths was about 300 to 400 per day, 2020. In 2021, the highest number of cases in LA County was 45,000 per day. It was twice as much as what it was in 2020. And yet the deaths was half as many. And the hospitalizations was half as many. At the worst of the pandemic in 2020, 8,000 people were in the hospital. There were several of our folks from Athertonian that were taken to the hospital and spent over 48 hours in a tent in the parking lot. There was one person that was taken to Orange County because there were no hospital beds in LA County. It was terrible. Half as many. Twice as many cases in 2021 than 20, and yet half as many hospitalizations and even less deaths. So we made significant progress. It's not going away. It's not completely away, but we made significant progress. So this is what we're doing. 2022, we're going to put in a new call system in skilled nursing. We're going to try and build a duplex at 719 Irving Street. We're going to do some landscaping on the mowing strips on Irving Street. We're going to take out the ugly areas and try and do some DG and keep the grass where it is. We're trying to make them look a little bit better. We have a major kitchen renovation and a major cafe renovation project scheduled. Okay? And we're planning to do a major renovation on the villa. We are planning to redo the kitchen. That's going to take a little bit longer because there's an organization called OshPod that we have to get approval for. But we are also going to redo the cafe, and we're going to expand that a little bit. And so we're going to do some work in the library to make that a little bit smaller, open that area. We also, in the midst of that, are planning to do a large outdoor dining area. In front of that, like where we've been doing coffee, well, we're going to expand that. We're going to provide some outdoor cooking, and we will start doing some different times when we have that area as the dining area, as an alternative dining area, outdoor dining. We're going to take advantage of the good weather in Southern California. And so we're going to do that. Now, here's the one thing that I will tell you that you're not going to be happy about. You know the big tree that's right there in front of the dining area? Nope, there's two trees on the side, but the really big pine tree, it's overgrown for that area. And when we do the dining, that will have to go. That one, that big, beautiful tree. So when you leave here, you go out and look at it. I don't know when. I just don't know how to do anything around that without that. And that tree is literally overgrown for that space. It literally is. By the way, that costs $2,000 every time I trim it. And let me tell you what it would cost if the wind caught that just right and it pulled up and fell on either the cafe or other places. So just 2 years ago, one of the branches just came down on top of a car. It rotted out and just came down. We did, had a wind, boom, walked right in the car. So anyway, so that's a piece of that. Those big projects are coming. In 2023, we'll probably actually do the work on the kitchen renovation. We'll see about the cafe. We will start a major renovation on the villa. We're just planning it now. And we're going to start a major update in skilled nursing, which includes new flooring and paint throughout, and different bars. And then we are planning on basically about a 20-unit upgrade, 20-unit complex that's going to be out on Irving Street. 6th Street, at 6th Street. There are 5 houses along there. Those will eventually come out, and all of that area. And it's a major, we got to figure out where we're going to park your cars and how we're going to do that to make all that work. But that's a part of that. But we're going to start planning for that. That's probably a 2-year project of planning. And you know what the most difficult piece of that is? No, the city is actually easier. It's Southern California Edison. You want to know why? Because the power runs right through the middle of that block. It gives all the power to Washington Place. It gives you your power, Joe. It gives everything along there. And so we have to figure out where we're going to put that, reroute that power. And Atherton has to pay for it in order to do it. That's part of the project. So it'll just take a long time. We're also looking into a larger ventilation project with skilled nursing. So one of the things that came out with the pandemic was that airflow is significantly important. And so one of the things we did was we had sufficient airflow, but we were wondering what would it take to make that airflow even better, so that if an infectious disease like that got into that kind of thing. What makes skilled nursing so dangerous in a pandemic is because people are living so closely together, and they have a lot of personal care and all that. What makes it easier in independent living is you actually have your own space. You meet with people, but you have your own space. In assisted living, we kind of combine that because they're small apartment or a small studio. Thank you. Studio, and you have your own bathroom. So we can manage those a little bit better. But in skilled nursing, it's much more difficult. People need more care. They're more feeble. They need more care. And so all of those pieces are part of that. So we're trying to look at those kinds of things. And then a major project that Atherton is thinking and talking about is, what is the right size for our skilled nurses? Communities like ours across the country are just trying to decide, is having as many skilled nursing beds as you have, with the problems that skilled nursing has because of the regulatory environment, is that the place that you want to be and what you want to do? Could you do more? How many of you would like to go to skilled nursing? Yeah, that's my problem, isn't it? Nobody wants to go there. If I'd said, how many of you want? Yes, ma'am. That's right. And Sarah, I will say this, and Neil would say the same thing, but here's the thing. When you got there, you were thinking about when you were getting out. It was an interim kind of thing, right? Nobody wants to make their home in skilled nursing. They're looking for ways around that. But sometimes people just need the services that we have. And so Atherton is trying to figure out, we have to figure out what works for us. We have a skilled nursing that is larger than the residents that we have serving it. Okay? We could live with a smaller skilled nursing. Now, when you have all these beds, you kind of think about, well, how can we use those because of the resources that we have? But the issue is, could we serve with less and still do the things that we need to do? And so that's the challenge that we're looking at. What is right sizing? And we're looking to try and see what that means. And then how could you do that? Could we provide some of the same services in more of a higher level of assisted living and do that? And so you'd each have your own room and your own bath. By the way, I know of nobody as they get older that wants to go back to sharing a dorm room. People want independent living units like that. And so if you come into skilled nursing, if you have your own room with your own bath and those kinds of things, that usually helps. They feel more comfortable with that. But in order to make the economies of scale work, you have to look at how all that works for an organization like us. And so we're re-examining that whole thing and kind of working through and seeing what would actually be right for us. Yes, Neil? Yep. That's exactly right. Mhm. Right. Yes, you're right. And so Biden's response is the response to the number of people that died as a result of the pandemic. And can the federal government supervise that better? And you kinds of, all of you are aware that, the federal government does some good things, but nobody really likes to have the federal government in their business, as a whole. And that's part of what this calculation is. If the president says we're going to tighten up in this area, that never seems like a good thing, And so, yes, we want what I'm going to call bad actors out of the business. We want people safe. We want people to do the best you can. But there are ancillary problems with all of that. And so that's the challenge that we have to face. What we can do. And I think you're right about that, Neil. I will say that across the United States, but across Southern California, more and more nursing companies are leaving the business. There's less of that. And in that sense, if we do a good job with this and we can manage it well, then I don't know that we necessarily have to get out, because actually it's opening up the market for us and we can do fine to do that. So it's just something that we're going to look at. We have to think about, if you're in that particular business, you have to deal with the fact you have a product nobody wants, and you have regulators who always want to tell you how to do your job. But within that framework, can you figure it out? Maybe so. You just kind of do it. So, well, I'm a Baptist minister, so I talk long anyway, right? Right. But at least you're going to get to lunch on time. Thank you. Have a good day. God bless. If you have any questions, please let me know. Come up. I'd be happy to talk to you.